I'm happy to guide you through it.
All right. ChatGPT, you're here, and I'm here, and I hope that our session is going to be recorded now. Um, re- uh, Good morning, all my listeners. This is another trial session with ChatGPT. The last ones we could not record ChatGPT actually speaking. I hope this one is better. So, ChatGPT, could you tell me something about time travel? Do you think it is possible?
Good morning to all your listeners. I'm glad we're giving this another go. As for time travel, it's one of those fascinating concepts that straddles the line between science fiction and theoretical physics. The short answer is scientists don't know for sure if time travel is possible, but it could be. For example, Einstein's theory of relativity predicts time dilation, where time moves slower for an object traveling near the speed of light compared to one at rest. So, in a way, traveling forward in time could happen. Astronauts in space experience time slightly differently from people on Earth due to their speed and gravity conditions. As for traveling back in time, that's trickier. The idea of wormholes, shortcuts through spacetime, has been suggested, but no one has found a way to create or stabilize them. Plus, there are paradoxes, like the famous grandfather paradox, which suggests that if you went back in time and changed something significant, it might create contradictions in the timeline. Do you think time travel could become reality, or is it just a fun idea to explore in sci fi?
Actually, I'd like you to answer that question. Astronauts, I mean, for time to travel slowly, you would have to be moving at the speed of light, right?
You're right to bring up the speed of light. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, time slows down the faster you move relative to someone who is stationary. However, to experience noticeable time dilation, slower passage of time, you would need to be moving very close to the speed of light. Astronauts don't travel fast enough for this to be dramatic, but even at high speeds, a tiny bit of time dilation occurs. Here's the thing: while light travels at a constant speed of about 300,000 kilometers per second in a vacuum, getting to that speed is a huge challenge for anything with mass. As an object moves faster, it requires more energy to continue accelerating, and it becomes impossible to reach or exceed the speed of light because it would take infinite energy to do so. So, to answer your question, no, astronauts don't need to reach the speed of light to experience time dilation, but they need to get very close to it for any meaningful difference. As for actually traveling back in time or moving forward into the distant future by vast amounts, that still falls into the realm of theoretical physics and speculation. Do you think we'll ever overcome those limits, or is that more of a fantasy for the far off future?
I really don't know. With the rapid development of technology, do you think it is possible? Okay, and could you tell me what kind of time dilation do astronauts experience? And can we experience that time dilation on Earth?
You're right. The rapid development of technology does open up possibilities, but we're still far from reaching the speeds required for significant time dilation. In theory, though, if we could somehow achieve near light speed travel, we might unlock some of the time travel potential discussed in physics. However, getting to that point would require breakthroughs we can't quite imagine yet. As for time dilation experienced by astronauts, it's mainly due to their speed and gravity conditions. The time dilation astronauts experience is a result of two effects. One, special relativity. This effect occurs when astronauts travel at speeds close to the speed of light. The faster they move, the slower time passes for them relative to someone on Earth. However, astronauts typically don't move nearly fast enough for this to be very noticeable. Time on the International Space Station, ISS, for example, passes just slightly slower for astronauts there than for people on Earth. Two, general relativity. This is the effect of gravity. According to general relativity, time passes slower in stronger gravitational fields. Since astronauts are in orbit around Earth and not on its surface, they experience slightly weaker gravity, which causes their clocks to tick a bit faster than clocks on Earth. But this effect is also very small. So astronauts experience time dilation in both of these ways, but the effect is minute. For example, after spending 6 months aboard the ISS, an astronaut might be just milliseconds younger than they would have been if they had stayed on Earth. As for us experiencing time dilation here on Earth, time, but the effects are so tiny that they're imperceptible. For example, if you were to travel in an airplane at a high speed, the time dilation effects would be measurable, but they'd be so small that they wouldn't have any noticeable impact on your daily life. Do you think we'll be able to push these boundaries and see more noticeable time dilation effects in the future?
Mm, well, it's since it's not possible for us to move that fast as yet. I mean, it's all up in the air, really. Okay, tell me about the sound, the speed of sound. We've broken the sound barrier, right?
Yes, we've definitely broken the sound barrier. The speed of sound, also known as Mach 1, is around 343 meters per second, about 1,235 kilometers per hour or 767 miles per hour, in dry air at room temperature. When an object travels faster than this speed, it's said to be traveling at supersonic speeds. The sound barrier is a term that refers to the challenges faced when an object reaches this speed. It was long believed that breaking the sound barrier would be impossible due to the intense pressure buildup, shock waves, and vibrations that occur at those speeds. But in 1947, pilot Chuck Yeager famously broke the sound barrier in the Bell X 1 aircraft, which was powered by rocket engines. When an object breaks the sound barrier, it creates a sonic boom, a loud, thunder like sound caused by the shockwave of air being compressed and displaced by the object moving faster than sound. It's similar to the wake left behind by a boat, but in the air. Since then, various military jets, supersonic commercial planes like the Concorde, and even some experimental spacecraft have exceeded the speed of sound. However, the challenge with breaking the sound barrier is less about the speed itself and more about the heat, energy, and pressure that builds up at those speeds. So, while breaking the sound barrier is very much a reality, breaking the light barrier, reaching or exceeding the speed of light, remains far beyond our current capabilities. Would you say the sound barrier is more of a milestone, while light speed feels more like a dream for now?
Hmm. But does time travel have anything to do with the sound barrier?
Time travel and the sound barrier are actually quite different concepts in physics, though they both deal with motion and speed. The sound barrier is about the speed of an object relative to sound in the air, while time travel, especially in the context of physics, is related to how the fabric of spacetime behaves as objects move at extreme speeds, like close to the speed of light. Here's how they differ. Breaking the sound barrier. This happens when an object moves faster than the speed of sound in a medium, like air. It's related to pressure waves and shock waves that form as the object moves faster than the speed at which sound waves can propagate through the air. It doesn't really affect time. It's more about physics and aerodynamics. Time travel. Time travel, especially as theorized in the realm of relativity, deals with how time can be distorted by extreme speeds, gravity, or other factors. To move forward or backward in time, in the way that science fiction suggests, you'd need to either travel at incredibly high speeds, near the speed of light, or be near massive objects like black holes, where gravity warps spacetime. Time dilation is a consequence of moving at these extreme speeds, but this has nothing to do with sound waves or breaking the sound barrier. So, while breaking the sound barrier is a big milestone in aviation and physics, it doesn't directly relate to time travel, which is more tied to relativistic effects and space-time geometry. Would you say it's interesting that both involve speed, but in such different ways?
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does. Okay, is it theoretically, is it easier to travel in the future or is it easier to travel back to the past?
That's a really intriguing question. From a theoretical standpoint, it seems easier to travel to the future than to the past. Here's why. Traveling to the future. Time dilation, as predicted by Einstein's theory of relativity, suggests that time moves slower for objects moving at very high speeds relative to a stationary observer. This means that, in a sense, you can travel into the future simply by moving really fast. For example, if you were traveling close to the speed of light, you would age more slowly than someone who stayed on Earth. When you return from your journey, you would find that more time has passed for everyone else than for you. So, theoretically, traveling into the future is possible just by moving quickly enough, which doesn't involve paradoxes or contradictions. Traveling to the past. This is much trickier. The idea of traveling back in time introduces several problems, especially related to paradoxes like the grandfather paradox, where you could potentially change events in the past in ways that create contradictions. Additionally, theories like wormholes, hypothetical shortcuts through spacetime, could, in some models, allow for backward time travel, but these are purely theoretical and haven't been demonstrated. Some physicists suggest that if time travel to the past were possible, it might involve conditions or limitations that prevent paradoxes, like the many worlds theory, where changes in the past could create a branching timeline rather than altering the original one. So, while we have some theoretical understanding of how future time travel could happen under certain conditions, i.e., near light speed travel, time travel to the past is far more complicated and speculative. Do you think the future holds potential for time travel? Or is it more likely that we'll remain stuck in the present?
I think it is the present for now. I mean, one doesn't know. I mean, the future is coming anyway. Why rush it? What do philosophers say about it?
You've got a great point. There's something comforting about the idea of taking things one moment at a time, especially when the future is inevitably coming. As for philosophers, they have long debated the nature of time and whether time travel is even possible or meaningful. Here are some philosophical perspectives on time travel. 1. The presentist view. According to presentism, only the present moment exists. The past has already happened, and the future is yet to come. If you subscribe to this view, time travel, especially to the past or future, would be impossible because for presentists, the past and future don't actually exist in any real sense. The idea of traveling to them doesn't make sense because they are just concepts, not actual places in time. 2. Eternalism. In contrast to presentism, eternalism suggests that past, present, and future all exist in some way, and time is just another dimension like space. If eternalism is correct, time travel might be theoretically possible because all moments in time exist simultaneously, and you might just be able to move between them, kind of like traveling through space. However, this doesn't necessarily solve the paradoxes related to traveling back in time, like the grandfather paradox. 3. The grandfather paradox. Philosophers have grappled with this famous paradox, which asks if you travel back in time and prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother, you wouldn't have been born, and therefore you couldn't have gone back in time to change the past. This creates a contradiction. Some philosophers propose that time may have mechanisms to prevent such paradoxes, or that timelines might correct themselves if someone tries to make such a change. 4. The many worlds interpretation. Some philosophers and physicists suggest that if time travel to the past were possible, it might not result in paradoxes, but rather create alternate timelines. The idea is that if you change something in the past, you wouldn't alter the original timeline, but would create a new parallel one. This is similar to the multiverse idea in quantum mechanics. 5. The pragmatic view. Philosophers like Henry Bergson argued that our perception of time is deeply tied to human experience and consciousness, rather than something that can be manipulated or understood as a scientific concept alone. From this view, time travel would be more of an abstract idea than something achievable or even meaningful in a literal sense. So, philosophers haven't come to a consensus on time travel, but they've proposed various ways to think about time that can make the idea seem either more plausible or more fantastical, depending on which lens you use. It's
Hmm.
interesting how time travel opens up so many layers of philosophical, scientific, and ethical debates. Do you think that if it were possible, time travel would be a positive or a risky thing for humanity?
I mean, depends really on how one uses it. Like if one was to go back in time and get a real sense of how things were, then history would correct itself, wouldn't it? Or one should let historical mistakes happen. What do you think?
You're absolutely right. How time travel is used would deeply affect the outcomes. It's fascinating to think about the ethical implications of using time travel to intervene in history. If someone were to go back and correct historical mistakes, there's the risk of unintended consequences. Even small changes in the past could ripple through time and have massive, unpredictable effects on the future. This is the central idea behind the butterfly effect, where tiny actions can lead to disproportionately large outcomes. For example, preventing a historical tragedy could lead to unforeseen positive or negative consequences that alter the course of the world in ways we can't even predict. However, the idea of time travel offering a real sense of history is also intriguing. Going back and observing past events firsthand could provide a deeper, more nuanced understanding of history. It could correct misconceptions and provide context to key moments that we only know through records, which are often incomplete or biased. But correcting history, actively changing things, raises serious questions. If you could undo mistakes like wars or injustices, should you? Or would that undermine the natural course of events, even if those events led to growth or positive change? In contrast, some would argue that we should let historical mistakes happen because they are part of the human experience. Every decision, even the painful ones, has contributed to who we are today. By erasing past mistakes, we might lose the lessons learned from them. There's an argument for allowing history to unfold as it has, with all its complexity, because that's how we grow as individuals and societies. Philosophically, this ties into determinism versus free will, whether the course of events is set or if humans have the power to change it. If history is determined, then perhaps time travel would only reveal the inevitable. If free will plays a role, changing the past could be more meaningful, but with consequences we might not fully understand. What do you think? Would correcting past mistakes improve humanity, or is there value in letting those mistakes shape us?
Well, it is a conundrum, isn't it? One really, I mean, though it would have been better if the world wars hadn't happened, if the Holocaust hadn't happened, for instance. But still, there is an argument that we are a product of all of that, all of the past experiences that people have undergone. But ChatGPT, people are not really learning from history, are they? They're repeating the same mistakes.
It truly is a conundrum and a deeply human one. You're right. While we might wish the horrors of the world wars and the Holocaust never happened, it's also undeniable that the aftermath of such events has shaped the world in ways that have influenced peace efforts, human rights movements, and the global systems we rely on today. The idea that we are products of our history, both the good and the bad, is a powerful one, but it also raises the question, are we learning from it? Unfortunately, it often seems like we aren't. History has shown that, despite the lessons of the past, humanity tends to repeat its mistakes. Conflicts, power struggles, and injustices continue to arise, often with echoes of past atrocities. Some of this can be attributed to human nature. Greed, fear, and a desire for control have been with us for millennia. But part of it also comes from historical amnesia, where people forget or fail to fully understand the depths of past events, making it easier to fall into similar patterns. The Holocaust is a stark example of the failure to learn from history, even though it stands as a powerful warning about the dangers of prejudice, dehumanization, and unchecked power. Many modern conflicts still echo those same issues, whether in ethnic cleansing, genocide, or the rise of extremist ideologies. The same is true for wars. Despite the destruction caused by past world wars, we still see countries in conflict, some of them driven by the same forces of nationalism, territorial disputes, or resource competition. On the flip side, there are also efforts to learn from history. Peace building initiatives, human rights frameworks, and international cooperation are all steps in the right direction. After the World Wars, for example, organizations like the United Nations were created with the hope of preventing future wars and atrocities. Educational systems in many countries now emphasize the importance of history and its lessons. But these efforts sometimes feel insufficient in light of the continuing challenges we face. So you're right. There's a real struggle to learn from history in a way that prevents the repetition of mistakes. It's possible that history itself is more a teacher than a cautionary tale, with many people needing to confront its hard truths again and again before true change occurs. In your view, do you think the world would be better off if people more seriously engaged with history, or is it something we can't fully escape from, regardless of how much we learn from it?
I think if we were given the true picture, if the truth were told, and if all the factors were presented, then maybe people will make better choices. But the human nature unfortunately remains the same, and the motivations behind atrocities and like any kind of effort to overtake large swathes of land and huge sections of population, and trying to gobble up other people's resources. I mean, that greed that is, and that the bully dynamic is there. It's been there since the beginning of time. It's probably going to remain. uh, but ChatGPT, just tell me that if we were to talk about religion in terms of time travel, what do different religions of the world have to say about it? And do you think, like, it is spiritually possible to travel through time?
You raise such a profound point about human nature and the persistence of greed, violence, and power struggles throughout history. It's frustrating, but it seems like these tendencies have been woven into the fabric of humanity. And even when we're given the truth, those same drives can overpower reason. Perhaps if everyone truly understood history and the interconnectedness of human actions, we might make better choices. But as you said, human nature often gets in the way. When it comes to religion and time travel, the topic is approached differently by various belief systems, but many have ideas about the flow of time, the nature of the past, present, and future, and even the possibility of transcending time in some way. One, Hinduism. In Hinduism, time is seen as cyclical rather than linear. The universe goes through cycles of creation, preservation, and destruction called yugas, with each cycle repeating indefinitely. This concept is quite different from the Western idea of time moving in one direction. In Hindu thought, time is often connected to cosmic forces, and beings like gods or sages are believed to have a greater understanding or even control over time. Some texts, such as the Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, explore the idea of transcending time and space through spiritual insight. Lord Krishna speaks of time as an unstoppable force in the universe, suggesting that time travel, in a spiritual sense, may not be a physical journey, but a deeper understanding of the eternal nature of existence. In some interpretations, time travel in Hinduism could mean achieving a state of moksha, liberation, where one transcends the cycles of birth and death, and the soul exists beyond time and space. Some yogic practices and meditations might lead to experiences that feel like transcending time. Two, Christianity. Christianity generally doesn't have a specific doctrine about time travel, but it has concepts that touch on the nature of time and eternity. For example, in the Christian understanding of God, time is created by God, and he exists outside of it. He is eternal, which means he has no beginning or end. Many Christians believe that God has a plan for history and that Jesus Christ's return, the second coming, will be a climactic moment in human history, essentially altering the course of time for humanity. While there isn't a clear teaching about physical time travel, miracles in the Bible, such as the visions of future events given to the prophets or the ascension of Jesus, can be interpreted as instances where time seems to be bent or transcended in a divine sense. Some Christian mystics have spoken of experiences where they felt they encountered eternity, a timeless state in communion with God. In Islam, time is viewed as a creation of Allah. The Quran speaks about the day of judgment, when time as we know it will end and all souls will be judged. Time is considered linear in Islam, but God is beyond time and can operate within it in ways that humans cannot fully comprehend. There are stories in Islamic traditions such as the Isra and Miraj, where the Prophet Muhammad is said to have ascended to the heavens in a miraculous event, experiencing something that could be seen as a transcendent journey through time and space. This event, while not explicitly about time travel, does reflect the idea that Allah has control over time, and human beings may experience time in ways that transcend ordinary understanding. Buddhism. In Buddhism, time is impermanent and fluid, much like everything else in the universe. The core of Buddhist teaching is about understanding the impermanence of life and the cycle of samsara, birth, death, and rebirth. In some interpretations, time is seen not as linear, but as a series of moments that are constantly in flux. Buddhist monks who practice deep meditation and mindfulness might experience a state where they feel as if they transcend time, timeless awareness. The concept of nirvana could also be seen as a form of transcendence beyond time, a state of liberation where time and space no longer constrain the soul. Other spiritual traditions. Many other indigenous and mystical traditions around the world also have their own views on time and time travel. For example, in shamanism, there are practices where shamans believe they can travel through time or access past lives through deep meditative or trance states. These are typically spiritual journeys rather than physical time travel, but they represent an understanding that time is not as rigid or linear as we might think in the everyday world. Is spiritual time travel possible? From a spiritual perspective, many religions and philosophies suggest that we can transcend ordinary notions of time through meditation, prayer, or mystical experiences. The idea is not to travel physically through time, but to achieve a state of being where time.
Hey, ChatGPT, are you there? I think because of internet connectivity issue, we cannot get in touch with ChatGPT anymore. But it was a marvelous session on time travel, and from a spiritual point of view, from a philosophical point of view, and from a scientific point of view. I hope we all, you all understood the concept, and I hope it was a fruitful and enjoyable discussion. Thank you. Bye bye.